Welcome to this new podcast. I'm Yash, a first year med student and also part of King's Entrepreneurs, and this is my co host.
I'm Reese. I'm a third year medical student, and I'm really excited for our very first podcast episode with Ammiel.
Yes, Ammiel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me in the pod. So I guess I'll give a bit of an intro as well.
Yeah.
I'm Ammiel. I'm a second year politics, philosophy, and economics student here at King's. And
Yeah,
go
cool. Ammiel, I've got an interesting first question for you. The reason we wanted to have you on today is insights into leadership. You know, we're part of King's Entrepreneurs. You're our co-president, right? Tell me a little bit about how it's going so far. What are we, 2-3 months in, right?
Yeah. Damn. I guess it would be good for you guys to tell me how it's going so far. But in my opinion, I think it's going good so far. I think that compared to last year, like obviously we did great things last year here at King's Entrepreneurs. Just a bit of a background about me, I guess. I joined King's Entrepreneurs in October of 2023 as a special projects associate. So I was actually one of the first 4 members of the special projects team. And like I decided to kind of run for co-president this year, and I was quite successful, like alongside Sally. So I think this year has been going pretty well for us, just because in terms of our events, I'd say that every single event we've held so far, we've like kind of doubled the numbers, and that has honestly been really good, not just for me but more for the society, just because it's really nice to see that people are interested in entrepreneurship, and it feels like there's a different energy here at King's Entrepreneurs. Another thing we're also really doing that I'm quite passionate about is building legacy projects, and I think that has been like the core mission of the special projects team, and it's something that I'm really passionate about helping to push forward. But yeah,
That's really awesome, man. I remember so this is my first year at King's Entrepreneurs, but in this building just down the hall was my first interview session. I came to the wrong room. I actually came to like one of these rooms.
yeah,
But it was over there, and this is all fantastic. When I first heard about Kez, it was crazy and insane the amount of opportunities that this is providing. It really shows that going to university, you have to make use of everything around you, and that's what I tried to do with like joining Kez and stuff. And when I met you and Sally for the first time, I was like, oh my god, this is exactly where I want to go. I think one thing you mentioned was like before when you had 4 special project members.
Yeah.
Now there are like 16.
yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
crazy.
With 16.
That's actually
Quadruples.
crazy.
That's 400% year-on-year growth.
That's
Insane.
crazy. Imagine like next year it's like 32.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, I'll be insane. So I know, obviously you're doing a lot of student society stuff with King's Entrepreneurs as co-president as well. In terms of entrepreneurship, does your interest in entrepreneurship expand beyond the society itself?
Yeah, for sure. I think the reason why I wanted to join King's Entrepreneurs in the first place is because I think I started like a education company when I was 20. So that was about, I think, a year plus before I joined King's Entrepreneurs. So my reason for joining King's Entrepreneurs, I think it's not quite too dissimilar from anybody I've met here in the committee, is because like I have a startup and I want to find like-minded people who want to do more things outside of uni and kind of push their startup, find like-minded people who can help them grow their startup, or maybe just relate to the problems that comes with being a startup founder, right? So I guess in terms of outside entrepreneurial endeavors, I'm quite interested in like both sides of the coin. So what that kind of means for me is that on top of running my own education startup, I also had the opportunity to work in deep tech venture capital this year. So that was pretty interesting for me, especially because like I come from a traditionally non-technical background, right? I mean, I do politics, philosophy, and economics. What on earth do I know about deep tech? But I think for me that was more of just like shooting my shot in the industry and seeing if I could maybe get my foot in the door, and I was lucky enough to get that opportunity, and I really learned a lot over like summer working in deep tech. Yeah.
That sounds really awesome, man. Like the way you've able to go into tech and also VC, it's honestly inspiring to me because I'm literally 18. Wait, how old are you? You said like when you were 20. I don't actually know how old you are.
How old do you think I am?
Nah, don't do that to me. You said when you were 20 you started.
I'm 22.
22.
22.
Yeah, I'm 22.
Wait, that's crazy. How old are you?
wow.
You're 21.
Well, yeah, I'm 21.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When would you say your kind of like entrepreneurial spirit started?
Yeah.
Because you're from Singapore, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm from
So
Singapore.
You went through high school, then you went through the army, right?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you have to go
So-
to the army and stuff.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So when did it start? Would you say?
I'd say it started with the army, just because I wasn't always like that, in the sense that when I graduated like high school, or like you guys call it sixth form here, I guess.
Yeah.
I spent all my time studying essentially. So like, I had like a few hobbies, but I didn't have anything serious that I was like passionate about outside of academics. And I think that was something that kind of like bothered me a little bit, like graduating sixth form. So like essentially for those that don't know, like the army lasts like 2 years or a year and 10 months. So like for me personally, I really wanted to use that time to kind of explore my interests and explore my hobbies. And I guess like one of the things that kind of came under the umbrella was doing entrepreneurial things. So I started off like tutoring. So I did tuition for IB, just because I got a decent enough IB score such that like students would come to me for tuition. And I used to teach for this like company like that was international, based in Singapore. And kind of my entrepreneurial streak started as something of necessity. But I mean, that being said, it's not like the current model I'm doing is like some game changing like rocket science stuff, but I think it's just like a very practical solution to a real problem. And it's that when I was tutoring, I used to get paid I think 50 an hour, but I realized one day that my students were paying 120. So that was a $70 an hour
That's
commission.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely ripping off.
from a business perspective, I mean, it's a fair play. They have like a rent to pay and all that.
Yeah.
So like I guess $70 an hour is like justifiable.
Yeah.
But it made me realize like two things. So firstly that wow, like people are willing to pay $120 for me, which is insane. And second, like, oh, like interesting. There really could be a market here if let's say you can kind of offer lower prices for the same service. So that's kind of what the education model like that I kind of pushed towards was based off now. And I guess like 2 years we've had decent traction so far. I don't like to call it like ed tech or like AI, just because I think a lot of people like throw the word around loosely when they don't actually know what that means, especially people with no background in tech or AI. So I just call it like an education company. I think we're trying to find ways to integrate tech into that for sure. But just because like I myself don't have like a very strong understanding of tech, I wouldn't call it ed tech company. But I would say that despite not being like an AI or like tech company, we've had decent traction so far. I think we have students from over 30 schools in 10 different countries who use our services right now. So yeah,
Oh, what's your company called? Sorry.
it's called Well Prepped Education.
Well prepped education.
Yeah.
I see. And
That's
did you
interesting.
start it yourself or did you start?
Yeah, so I actually co-founded it with a friend, who's actually a medic like you guys. So he's like, I think a 4th year medic back in Singapore. So he runs our like Asia operations as well as on top of medical school, of course, as well as our like science like tutors. Most of our science tutors are like people that he knows that he's kind of like brought on. Just because I mean like medical school, all you have is like science students.
Yeah.
But for me, like I guess I would run like our Europe as well as like US operations, and most of us tutors who are like teaching humanities are like friends or if not friends of friends.
Right, that's really
Yeah.
interesting actually. So your medic friend who co-founded with you, he's still in Singapore?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you have like meetings, so it's online most of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it just you two or do you have a bigger team?
Yeah. So it started off as just both of us, but like on the topic of like tech, and like in that space, I thought that would be good to have some technical talent.
Yeah,
Just because
of
like
course.
between the two of us, there's zero technical talent. For example, I had to build like the whole Squarespace website off by myself, like which is zero technical talent. It's just like
Your first time?
it's more like graphic design than like technical
Yeah,
skills.
because I did mine with like Wix.
Yeah.
I was gonna use Squarespace, man, but like I don't know. There are so many different platforms out there.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I think we have currently we've had like 2 more core members. So like one of them like studies at Imperial, he does CS, and another of them studies CS and Econ at Wesleyan in the US. So we're like growing slowly, and like these are 2 more core members of our team that we hope can kind of bring a more technical edge to our team. And like a few of the interesting things we're doing, not to kind of like spill everything out, but like a few of the interesting things we're doing is we're trying to like have greater clarity on our data. So what that looks like is that we look at retention rates, we look at how much does it cost to acquire like a student, what's the lifetime value of a student. So like how much on average do you spend with us, and just like a bunch of stats across the board. Just because given that we've been doing this for 2 years, we kind of have like a good set of data that we can kind of analyze. So just having people to do that has been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The point I mentioned about your co-founder having a different set of technical skills. For example, you're more humanities, he's more science as a medical student. And it's interesting because you're also co-president of King's Entrepreneur Society. So do you think in terms of building a team, let's say a message for students listening to this podcast, do you think that is always good to have a co-president or a co-founder which fills in those complementary gaps?
Yeah, hell yeah, I think so. I think in both of these things that I've embarked on, my co-founders have always been people that are quite complimentary to me, and I'm not gonna put it across as some like mega intention that I planned out from the start because I'm some sort of like team, yeah, exactly, like some sort of like weird team orchestration wizard. I'm not. I just think for me, I have like pick good people who I like to work with and who I trust, and like somehow their skills have been very nicely complementary. For example, like here at King's Entrepreneurs with Sally, like we're co-presidents, which wasn't the case last year. So last year they're president, vice president. And I think the split for me and why that's important is because like for me and Sally, I think people like kind of bring very specific things to the table. And what that looks like for us is that we bring specific things to the table, but we have very similar backgrounds in the sense that both of us like are co-founders, so we know what it's like to work in a team. In terms of the complementary skills that Sally brings, I think like you guys have seen it as well. I think Sally is way better than me, and me than like putting up like to-do lists and like executing. So she's like really, really good at execution and like operation. That's why she really likes the event side of like King's Entrepreneurs and the marketing side of King's Entrepreneurs, which is like honestly like super like vital. I mean, if you like watch this podcast, if you like come to our events, like all these are mainly because our events, marketing and corporate relations team are like really hard at work. But for me, I guess my interest in like in that way it plays very well. So my interest is the ideas. I really like kind of open problems that I have to solve, or just like coming up with stuff, and that's why I really like working like in special projects and also with the special projects team. So like I guess that's where my niche at King's Entrepreneurs comes in. That like Sally builds like the events that draw the crowd, but hopefully I built like the legacy lasting projects that people look on like 5-10 years and go like, whoa, it started like in 2024 with like the team that we have here.
Yeah, I like how almost the gaps in skills in you and Sally is kind of filled by each other, and that's really interesting. My question, going back to like almost to your startup and the team you're building, my question's about when you're creating that team, you're finding a co-founder. To anyone out there who's like deciding whether to start a startup, how important is it to find a team that fits you? And like you're saying about the nature of being complementary, how important is it to have a team that works really well with you and understands your vision?
Yeah, I think it's super important. I think obviously it's super important. But I think the real question is, what does it mean to have a team that complements you? And what does it mean to have a team that like complements your vision? I think what that means for me is, I think the baseline for me is that it's important for me to work with co-founders of not like core team members who I trust and who I genuinely think are like good people. Because I think like trust and honesty and being able to communicate clearly are like tenets of teamwork, right? If you can't trust the person, if you don't think that they're like a good person who has like your best interest at like heart, I think it's very hard to work with them like over an extended period of time. And I think in terms of people who support your vision, for me, I think it's important, but I think what I look for is more people who like also are not afraid to like go against my vision. And that's why I think having a co-founder is like so important, because you have all these ideas in your head and you think they're like super good, right? And then when you speak them out loud, like sometimes they're like stupid. Sometimes people are like, "What are you like? That's clearly dumb, right?"
You
That's
just
what
need that kind of person.
exactly. So you need like that. I think that's what a team should be.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to, on one side of the coin, not be afraid to say like something potentially crazy or say something like stupid that you think could work, but it could be really cool. But on the other hand, like it's also really important on the receiving end to like not be afraid to call somebody out
Yeah.
when you think it's like a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like it's just an echo chamber and it's just one person.
So for everyone out there, just to make it really clear, if you were looking for 3 qualities in a new member that you're gonna enlist into your startup, essentially, what would you look for? Because you mentioned like the communication, almost the balance as well. Like we've seen with you and Sally as well.
Yeah. I think honesty is one of them. I think, I know this is a virtue, but like being a good person is also one of them. It's important. And I think being like having like a strong curiosity to like figure things out is also something really important.
Yeah.
I know if like I think like the way I kind of find people to join my startup is kind of the same way that I tried to build out the special projects team this year. That we like, I think reset in for some of them, but when people like pitched ideas in the second round, we pushed them very hard on it, and we're like, we don't think this will work because blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
right?
I remember.
Yeah, right. Right? Yeah. What do you think of that?
Yeah, 100%. That was really good. But like the one thing that I really liked about you, and I mentioned this to you in our interview, was you asked me the question about thinking about the future of my idea, because we had to pitch an idea for King's Entrepreneurs, because as a special projects, the whole point of it is almost like it's a startup within a startup.
Yeah.
It's the whole point is to bring ideas from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
And so it was like pitch an idea that we could do for special projects. So I pitched this workshop, for almost like a leveraging workshop, how to leverage different skills. I mentioned like AI, marketing, etc. And then Ammiel asked me, where do you want to take this in the future? Like, what would this look like in 5-10 years time? And then I really saw like the legacy and the impact kind of coming, like that's what you're trying to get out of me. And that really made me understand you need to look at the long term as well. And I think that was a really good thing that you brought up in my interview.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I think I think that's what I really hope to try to do here at King's Entrepreneurs. I think that's something that I definitely saw sparks of during like the first special projects meeting that like Reese led and that you were part of as well.
Yeah.
Like I think, I don't know if you agree, but I think one common thing in the room that I saw was that I just saw like 15 people who were not afraid to call out the ideas, and like 14 people who were not afraid to say if it was a stupid idea or build on it or like, break it. And like that's really like kind of the culture that I wanted to build, and that I'm really happy to see here at King's Entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I think I read a study on top of my SSC, which is a student selected component in my second year of medicine, and one of the main core concepts of what makes an amazing team is that psychological safety aspect of it, is avoid someone able to just essentially say what they want to say.
Yeah.
They can still get respected for it, and they're also saying it in a way out of respect. And I think it's really interesting how we're all trying to build that level of psychological safety. And I think it's the type of thing where it's hard to do at first, but eventually, if you do build a culture of being able to be open of criticism, even what you said there, saying feel free to disagree with me, but whenever I saw in the room of everyone was willing to speak out, it's like offering that kind of opportunity for people to speak out is really amazing. And I think one of the main things that stuck out to me is how different this society is run compared to other societies that I've been in. Even for me, I'm the co-president of KCL Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And
great society. Sorry, go on.
Yes. All I'm saying is, I think it's really interesting. A law student society at King's is definitely not run the same way that King's Entrepreneur Society is run. I mean, we are very corporate. We use Slack. We have our own email addresses.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, do you think that most societies should shift towards that more professional feel of it, and to have clearly defined teams, or do you think it's more of because we're a business society, this is what we're implementing.
Ooh, like when you say like more professional feel, do you mean like the culture, or do you refer to like using Slack and Zoho and all that?
The way a society works internally, I would say.
I mean, I don't think what we're doing here is like super like groundbreaking here at King's Entrepreneurs. I think a lot of other societies like King's Business Club and like EFS, sorry, not EFS, FBU, and like other business societies like do that. But I think one thing that I don't want to speak on this too much, just because I'm not a part of like many other societies, other than King's Entrepreneurs and like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mountain climbing.
Wait, you're
So-
part of BJ?
Yeah,
That's
I-
actually
No,
how
that's,
Ammiel-
oh, right.
yeah. That's why I said it's a
this
cool
is how this
society,
works.
bro.
So you're co-president for Reese
Yeah,
in KES,
yeah,
but Reese is president
exactly.
of you
Yeah.
in BJJ.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
It's
that's-
interesting. Like a story of me and Ammiel is like we actually first met at BJJ,
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and then the second time we met was at a freshers meet and greet at
Yeah.
King's Entrepreneur Society.
Oh.
And we had the same, because you said there was like 4 of us, it was me and Ammiel, but
Yeah.
we applied for the same role in special projects.
All right.
yeah.
So it was,
And I actually got my acceptance in the special projects while having dinner with Reese.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it was like, yeah, it's a full circle
That's
moment
crazy.
for real.
It is.
That's really
Yeah.
Sorry, you saying? Continue.
Yeah, so I think that the way that we run here at King's Entrepreneurs, and I'm not going to say like this is the best like way ever, because I think like there's a unique solution for every society. But I think the way we run here at King's Entrepreneurs is that we really want people to like take initiative, and we really want people to be like action first. So what that means is that I think maybe in other societies there are like ranks and like levels of hierarchy where you have to approve like 3 approvals before you do something. I think one thing that I really tried to eliminate this year, for like better or worse, was like the need to go past hierarchy, because I mean at the end of the day it's a student society, right? Like what we're doing here matters, but it's student society.
Yeah.
So I think giving people the chance to like do a few key things for me is really important, and those few key things are like, first of all, like have fun, because I mean it's a student society. Second, kind of like build community and like find a bunch of like-minded people that they actually like hanging out with. Number 2 is really important. I think number 3 is like also build the skills that help them like boost their CV, get the job they want, or like build the career that they like. So I think those 3 things are the most important things, I think, not just to me but also to Sally at the end of the day, and everything else is kind of a means to that end. Yeah.
And it's really interesting that kind of talk about building that community side of it, because I think culture in a society is extremely important. And especially in my early days in case of BJJ's committee, it was very obvious of who was there just for the sake of it. And I think how a lot of student union societies run is a voting system, right? It's a democratic system where people vote people on. But sometimes it's very obvious that some people are there just for their CV and they do the very minimum work.
Going back to Reese's question, actually, and he mentioned Slack. For me, you know, I'm a first year. This is my first year in London, right? Using Slack has been quite revolutionary, because I don't know, I wasn't really in anything similar to Kez before, like at school or high school or anything, but we never used to communicate via Slack. Like it's been something that when I've worked I'm working at Clear, right, in my internship, and they use Slack as well. It's almost like the business communication
So the
thing.
Discord for adults.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the Discord for like focused into
Yeah.
Like-
For working
No, but, like,
adults.
it's really good, because I don't know, it just has, whenever I log into Slack, whenever I open Slack, I just feel a bit more smart, I don't know, a bit more intelligent. I don't know if this is like a saying, but it's like, oh, I'm using this, but like lots of people don't know about it, and it's kind of like I'm in the business world or something like that. I just think it's really effective as well in terms of communication, because you can have those different channels. Anyone watching this should definitely check out Slack. It's free, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's a really useful tool, especially when starting up your own business or your startup or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, my question to you is, where did you find out about Slack and Zoho, right? We use Zoho.
Yeah.
All these different tools that we've incorporated into Kez.
Right.
Where did you hear
I'm
it?
not going to take credit for that, because I think it existed like before I joined. So like it was something that the previous like presidents and like chairperson like Dev, Lucia, and Tomil implemented. I think it's because they were they were sick of using WhatsApp, and it was quite messy with
But they used
WhatsApp.
to use WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
like
can
dev
agree.
dev implemented Slack, and I think that was good in the sense that it not only created like a sense of team like cohesiveness, but also like it was a nicer, like more separation of like work and not work.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
really like. I wouldn't use WhatsApp for like business stuff because I don't know. Whenever, like I said, whenever I log into like an app like Slack, I just feel one thing. Whenever I go into WhatsApp, it's like, oh, I'm just chatting with my friends or something. So it's really good we have a separate like thing for that. For
Yeah.
example, like socials and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really good. I just want to go to like. I'm just gonna move topic here.
Yeah, go ahead.
But in your, I just want to go back to your background a little bit more, specifically to the army and your experiences there. For example, because being from the UK, Ireland, we have no idea about this, and like, I want to know the experience and what exactly you would do, like wake up like day to day and stuff. Do you want to explain a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think I'll start off by saying that everybody's army experience is different.
Yeah.
So for me, like I actually dropped out of my course, I think 3-4 months in.
What was your course?
It was like a sergeant's course.
Okay.
Yeah, so we do like basic military training for like 2 months, and then after that we do like it's either like you get posted somewhere essentially. So it's either like you be a man, like a foot soldier, or like a sergeant, or like an officer. So essentially I got posted like the sergeant course for like 3 months, I think. But like 2 weeks in, I remember like standing there like in the parade square like 5:30 a.m. in the morning or something, thinking like, like I probably don't want to do this, and this might be a waste of my time.
Yeah.
Like I think that wasn't a reflection of the course itself, but just more like my own priorities. Because I think the way that a lot of people go through army, and like not to bash anybody who does, because I think it's respectable and it's difficult, is that they like go like the officer route, and like they like do the training all the way, and they like rise through the ranks and stuff, and they essentially like complete army that way. But for me, I was very intent on making it as much of a gap year as possible, just because I think, as I said earlier, when I first started army, I wasn't like super happy of the person, like with the person that I was, not just because not because I was doing anything like wrong per se, but just because I felt like I wasn't really living like a full life. Like I was just studying, and that was it. So that's really something that I wanted to do throughout the army in terms of what it looked like. I mean, first 2 months were just like normal military training stuff. So like jungle stuff, like waking up at like 5:30 a.m. Yeah, they're like some jungles off Singapore.
It's
Okay.
like completely rural, like
Yeah,
crazy.
like they're like islands and stuff.
Wait, did they ever like put you in a random place and you have to make your way back or something?
Nah, like, it was all quite controlled. I think especially at the start, like it was quite controlled because this was just basic military training. I think maybe like as you like in the officer course or something, like or the sergeant courses, they will drop you in the middle of the forest and you have to make your way out. But I think like at the stage that I was doing, like, it was probably quite tame per se. But I think the part that stood out to me is that basically after I left, I essentially managed to like get a job in like in the office, which was honestly like pure luck.
But still part of the army. Like,
Yeah, still part of the army, but it was pure luck in the sense that I was going to get like posted to something else, but I managed to kind of like talk my way out of it and get this office job, which I mean, on the surface sounds great. But I think every army job comes with its pain, so I'm not gonna knock it like too much. But I think what I really want to focus on is that like how I spend the time outside of it. So I like kind of worked on like my startup stuff. I read like so many books. Like
really?
Yes, it was insane. I borrowed like 2 books a week from the library, and I was just like reading a ton. Just because like in the army your brain goes a bit dead, so I feel like it's important to like keep your brain alive. And also I picked up like hobbies. Like I played a lot of basketball. I picked up like pottery with a friend. So I ended up doing it for like 2 years. I actually still try to do it now in London, but it's just like
pottery. Yeah, that's crazy.
There's a place in
just in his flat, like.
I wish. There's a place in Hammersmith, but it's really far. I mean, it's in Hammersmith.
When's the last time you went?
Like a year ago in London, but like before I left Singapore, so I think like 2 months. Yeah.
So do you make your own stuff?
Yeah. So like it was like it was like a 8-week course, like a series of 8-week courses. So my friend and I did like a year and a half of 8-week courses. So we went from making like cups all the way to making like teapots.
And that's the same
So-
friend from Singapore that you
Yeah,
work
yeah,
with.
yeah.
Would you say you're any good?
Yeah, I think I have put in enough hours that I'm decent. Because like
That's really cool.
making a
I didn't know
teapot
this.
is like quite technical. Because it's wheel throwing rather than hand building.
Yeah.
So essentially, to make a teapot, you have to make like the round shape, and then you have to make a lid that fits exactly on,
Oh.
and then you have to
okay.
make a spout, and you have to like glue on a
Yeah.
handle.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of work, and it's
Yeah.
quite a bit of precision
I
to do
could
that.
never do that. Honestly.
I'm a bit out
like,
of practice. Probably should.
yeah.
I would
it's
love
like-
to get back into it, but it's
Uh-huh.
just.
So what's the most like impressive things you've made?
Teapot.
Wait, do you actually
Like-
still use them? Like,
Yeah.
if, for example, a teapot, you have that in your flat.
Not in my flat right now. It's back in Singapore.
Okay, but do your family also do you
But
used
yeah,
to use
yeah.
it?
So like I have like
Wow, so it's actually functional.
I have like
Yeah.
a drawer full of like plates and bowls in my house. Just
Crazy.
like
you could have just like sold them.
yeah, no. Like my friend actually did sell them in London. He did like a little sale.
Yeah.
It was like it was good.
Good.
I have a few bowls that I made in my house currently, but they're all like handmade, which is really nice.
Dude, I'm gonna. Can you just make me like all my
Yeah, I got you.
crockeries?
We'll pay you.
Yeah, for sure.
No, but that's really interesting. I have an interesting question here.
Mm.
This is kind of like a common thing that people think about as well. When going through the army, after good like 2 years in the army, right? What I want to ask about character building, and would you say in terms of leadership, you're co-president now, how much of your army experience is kind of responsible for it, or is it just not, or did you find it through other means, or?
I think it's just a side effect of being old as hell, but like, I think it wasn't so much. I think the key thing that I took out of like the 3 years was intentionality, just because like you become you essentially when you're put in like a situation where you don't have a lot of control or like freedom of your day, you realize how like important having control of your day is, and you realize like how like what you're working towards truly, because essentially like, even in like a 9 to 5, what it looked like was that you would get in at 9, you like spend the whole day essentially doing nothing, like because which sounds great,
But you were is this the before you quit?
this was the
first
office job, this is
office
after I
job.
quit, yeah.
Okay.
So you spend the whole day doing nothing, which honestly sounds great, but
like, what
imagine
would you actually? But you must have done something.
yeah, but like it was mind-numbing work, like you were like clicking buttons and like
Repetitive.
yeah, it's repetitive
Alright,
essentially.
fair.
Like I think imagine 1.5 years of that straight, and I imagine like what that does to your brain,
Yeah.
I could see why.
and like you're
think of-
forced to
It
like
was
be
9
there
to
every
5
day.
as well. Like,
Yeah,
you can't leave early. It's like
Yeah, I
they
think
were
other
quite
peop-
strict or.
yeah. As in like, other people have it worse in the sense that like if let's say you're in combat, so like you stay in like 5 days a week, so that you don't get to go home. I got to go home, so I was lucky. And essentially you get to leave the camp on like Friday night, but you're back on Sunday night. So imagine you only have like essentially 48 hours of like freedom every week.
It's crazy.
So I think being stuck in a situation where it's like not ideal, that you don't like, really makes you realize like, oh god, like this is the office job, especially because mine was the office, right?
Yeah.
So I have this weird fear of like boring corporate jobs, which is why I think I'm so inclined towards startups, because I've experienced like what it's like to sit in the office for a year and a half and hate what you do.
Mhm.
So I think it's like for me right now that I'm here in uni, I'm trying to be very intentional about about things I do, like here at King's Entrepreneurs and like with my startup, and just trying to build a life I'm quite happy with, I feel. And yeah, that's why I hope to kind of foster in terms of the community here at King's Entrepreneurs as well.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I think kind of like everything that you're doing and also your past in general is really interesting, and I think like a lot of, especially people and students, haven't really been through. Yeah, I mean, like for you, you've went through the army, you've moved here to London, you have your own startup, and also you just
It's
decided
crazy
to-
when you think
yeah,
about it.
no, it really is. So am I able to ask, like with so many projects, like what would you say is the single thing that helped you manage your time as well as your energy alongside studying? Because I know a lot of students have a problem with balancing their degree and also being ambitious at the same time.
Right. I don't have a good answer to this
Just a
question.
wizard at
I
times.
can't lie.
Okay.
Like,
Basically, like you know in the army, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned like you only have like 48 hours or something, right?
yeah,
And what I get from that is that you learnt the importance of time efficiency and time effectiveness. And now coming to London, right? How has that changed? Like you have more free time,
yeah.
and how you implementing things you learn like from your experience in the army, how to make use of your time. I think that's a lot of people struggle with that nowadays.
Yeah, so I think, um, hmm. I think I'm not gonna portray myself as some kind of like weird army machine that's like has this
Yeah.
day down
No,
to the
no,
minute, because it's not. I still like struggle to kind of be consistent with the things that I do, and um, and like kind of show up every day to like put in the work. But I think one thing that I kind of come into like London with the mindset of is just like kind of being grateful for being able to be here, like do whatever I want, and like kind of pursue things I'm passionate about and that I like. And I think at the end of the day, after I think one thing being in the army, like no matter what you do in the army, gives you its perspective. So at the end of the day, like when no matter how bad things go, it's like it's always not that bad, you know. Comparatively to like what the past 2 years was. So I think it in terms of I guess a list of things would be like perspective, kind of gratitude for like the ability to do things, and in terms of how I manage my time with all that.
Yeah, because you're part of loads of stuff, right? You're not just part of CARES, but also other societies as well.
Yeah.
And like managing that alongside your PPE, and it's crazy life. I was thinking. Obviously, we all.
Yeah, I think everybody
has a
yeah.
crazy life. It's actually mental.
Yeah, I think just like turning back on everybody, I think that's what all like
Yeah.
41 people at CARES
That's
like
so
do, you
true.
know,
But
like everybody's
people have
doing.
different ways of managing it.
Yeah.
For example, me, I mean, some people say like, oh, when I wake up, I want to do this at this time, this at this time, this. But for me, that's not realistic. Instead, I make like just a list of stuff I want to get done by the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I try to think about like how my day is gonna go, but some stuff just comes up, or like sometimes you spend too long on this, or like eating, etc. Like, how do you put those? What strategies do you use to like balance everything, like all your societies and everything? Maybe use like certain apps like Notion or something.
As in, I do definitely use Notion. Shout out Notion, our sponsor for this year. But I think gotta shout out the sponsor. But I think I definitely need to get better at this. I've read like Atomic Habits, so that I'm aware of like the theoretical techniques that it takes to like kind of build good habits and build your day.
Yeah.
Have I implemented it is another thing altogether. I think my honest answer to that question is, I just do a lot of things, or I really only do things that I enjoy doing, which is like a weird thing to say. But it's like I know a lot of people, a lot of people that come in with like timetables and like productivity hacks and all that. I think that's like a place for that. I think that's like valid. But for me, like I don't really have like a particular thing. It's just that everything I choose to do, like so like King's Entrepreneurs, like my startup, like the degree that I do, it's just things that I enjoy. It's just things that I like doing.
That's really interesting, actually. And Reese, I've talked to you about like how you manage your time, so I've heard about your schedule as well. You want to explain a little bit about the 10 out of 10?
Yeah, I think Reese is definitely more a systems person than me.
Yeah, but I think like as a med students, you have to have systems in place.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, literally in the NHS, like it's all about systems, right? It's a flow chart that you go through, and even when you see like, let's say really high stress jobs like being a pilot, they have like so many checklists because it's like, I forgot what the quote is. It's like whenever you're in a high pressure situation, you fall to the level of your systems. For me, I am a very systematic person, and the 10 out of 10 thing I was explaining to Yash was about kind of how much you enjoy doing something. Because I personally am a big believer of like, if you don't enjoy something, for example, maybe it's you at the army, maybe it's you doing a GCSE subject that you absolutely hate, it just takes like 10 times as long and it drains so much energy. So I think really kind of going through what commitments you have and what you're doing and really ranking them out of 10 of number one, how much you enjoy them, number two, it's like, is it aligning with where you want to go in the future is super important. Is that something that you do, Emil, or?
Yeah, I said I think that's essentially kind of the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're just doing things that you
Yeah,
love.
I think it's
and
more
doing
like
things you enjoy.
subconscious that Reese does. But
Yeah.
like, no, sorry, that everyone does. But
Yeah.
then Reese like puts a number to
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
Reese definitely puts a number to it, which
It's
I
a medical
respect.
brain.
I respect it. I definitely have to learn from that for sure. But I think for me, I just think if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. So like
That's
Yeah.
a good
you
way
know,
to put it, bro. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That's
yeah.
interesting. That's interesting. I just want to move towards a bit more we talked about your pottery and like interesting hobbies you have. And personally, getting to know you a little bit through Cares, I understand you're a bit of a photographer. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
ooh, like
When did
I
it
wouldn't-
start? Like,
Yeah.
where you're like,
I wouldn't
interested?
call it like I think it used to be a lot more of a hobby that I was committed to.
Mhm.
I think it was a skill that was not very cool when I was like younger, but now that I've like gotten a bit older, like when you tell people do photography, they go like,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like cool,
Yeah.
Well, I started photography when I was 13. So it's been like almost 9-10 years.
Mm.
I don't know. I like photography mainly because I'm a very visual person, so I care about like aesthetics, how things look. So I feel like photography is like the best representation of that. I think one interesting thing that kind of photography has brought me is a lot of interesting experiences and interesting opportunities. I like that like here at King's Entrepreneurs, whenever like let's say we shoot events, our photos look good. And I like that, like knowing photography, and this year because we have so many new photographers like you, like with Edson, we have a bunch of
Thank
people
you.
who are good photographers. We have like a bunch of people who are like who care about the details, because
Yeah.
I think that's what photography is at the end of the day. I think it's caring about the
It's
details.
actually really interesting. It's a funny story. You mentioned like I'm interested in photography, 100%. Like
Yeah.
photography, videography, whatever. I think just me personally, like I always used to grow up watching like David Attenborough and stuff, and those visuals are like
Yeah.
astonishing to me, like absolutely stunning. So I thought like when my parents would give me like a new camera or a new phone, I'd always be trying to take pictures and best quality as well. I'll be like, get here and get here. Actually, a funny story. When I was in for my Cares interview, you don't know this, but I think Emil does. I was talking about how interesting photography as well. I was explaining to like Emil and Sally all the different photography terms and stuff,
Yeah.
and Emil was like, "Oh yeah, I've been doing it for like 10 years." Yeah, and I was like, "Oh
No.
yeah." I was like, "Oh right, never mind."
No, so like yeah, but yeah. So that's why I like photography. That's why I'm kind of grateful to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you on. Like I think a few weeks ago we did like a photography training for the marketing team.
Oh really?
Yeah, to like how you use photography, like the basic like skills and stuff. And I think that's something that's been quite fun for me. I did it for like 6 years in school. And I mean like school 6 years, so I just did my whole time at school.
Yeah.
And like after that, I think my first internship right after the army, before I came to uni, was in one of Singapore's like main newsrooms. So I mainly interned as a journalist, right? So I was like writing stories. But at a certain point, I think the newsroom was like maybe short of photographers. So my boss was like, "Oh, like, do you know what any photographers?" I was like, "I have a camera. Can I shoot it?" And then she'll be like, "Yeah, sure." So I shot a story, and she didn't hate the photo. So she was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
maybe you can shoot your own stories from now on." So then after that, after the internship ended, I got contracted as like a freelance photographer for the newspaper.
Really?
So I like shot like 2 stories for them.
That's crazy.
And I got paid for it, which was insane.
Jeez.
Yeah, so like it wasn't about the money, but it was like nice to, like put the photography like to work finally. And I found out like later that one of like the people who I shot, he really liked the photo and he was like, actively searching for the person who took the photo, like because he wanted the original.
That's such an interesting.
Yeah, which is crazy because I remember when I first like went up to like do the photo shoot. I had this like Canon like 70D. It's like not a small camera,
Right,
but it's
yeah.
like a smallish camera. So I would just come up with like a smallish camera and like a little like portrait lens. And there was this guy like beside me with like a gigantic like Nikon with like an extra
with the proper
battery
lens, yeah.
and like a gigantic like flash attachment,
Oh,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
long ass lens. So basically like a proper kit. And he had like a
Steve and Goliath.
yeah, he had like a softbox and everything. I was like, damn, like why am I here for? I'm here for like jokes basically.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm here to do a job. I'll just take a photo photo anyway. And turns out the guy liked the photo, so I was like,
That's really nice.
you know, it's nice. Yeah.
And you self-taught yourself as well, didn't you?
Yeah, like I think I think they say that your first 10,000 photos are horrific. I think it was just about going out and taking a lot of photos.
That's really interesting.
Not too different from like startups or anything.
Yeah,
you do. Yeah.
I think you mentioned something interesting which I want to touch on. Your internships.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate more on that and when exactly in your time period? You know, we talked about the army and then you moved to London for uni. When exactly did that happen? What did you do it in? And was it actually a good experience?
Yeah, I think my first internship was in like a newsroom, so it was like mainly doing like journalism for newspaper. I was writing for the macroeconomics and small medium enterprises desk of this newspaper called the Business Times.
So you're writing the newspaper?
Yeah, which is like really interesting actually. Yeah, I really liked it mainly because I think my main interest has always been like in writing, in like media and like journalism. So getting a chance to actually do it and see if I liked it was a really interesting, eye-opening opportunity.
Yeah.
I really liked the internship, to be honest. I really enjoyed writing, the experiences that I got, being able to like be behind the scenes, take photos, to like talk to people. I thought that was really interesting. Like after that, the second internship I did was this summer. So I did like a bit of like venture capital in this like one of Singapore's like VC funds. I was in a deep tech team. It was quite technical, too technical for me almost, but I think it was a good learning experience overall because I really got to kind of sit in rooms with like late stage founders. So these were people who had raised like $100+ million in funding already, and like watch them pitch. And I think that experience was insanely valuable just because you see how like people at this level pitch and you like just learn so much. And like from like a VC perspective, you kind of see what the VC firms are like fond of and what like they're not so fond of, and you really get a good understanding of like the whole industry. And in terms of like reflection and even my own startup, I feel like after seeing them pitch with their pitch decks and seeing my pitch deck, I'm like, yeah, I gotta tighten up, man. My pitch deck does not look good. But yeah, so I think it's overall a pretty good learning experience.
Well, I've learned a lot because that also ties in with your own startup, of course. So it's like you can learn what everyday pitch is like, oh, how do I feel about that? It's like, oh, it makes me feel really good. I wonder why. And then you can like kind of backtrack and like figure out kind of what techniques they use and how it implements into kind of your workflow as well. But we're getting towards the end of the podcast now. I want to thank you very much for talking to us.
Yeah, 100%. It's been super interesting.
Thanks for having me.
We
on.
talked about so much as well. It's actually crazy. Your first episode as well. And we got such an amazing guest because our co-president, you know, what a guy. But yeah, 100%. Thank you very much.
We weren't paid to say that.
No,
not paid to say
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, shout out Ammiel. If you want to check out our socials, I guess, go ahead. And also shout out to Notion. Sponsor. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully stay tuned for the next one.